Hey everybody. What we're going to do today is I want to walk through some of the things you all have been looking at over the last couple of days. And I'm going to use the Google Classroom page as kind of the go-to. So as you can see, both Monday and Tuesday of this week were relatively the same thing here. But I did a little bit of a drill down for some of y'all on the chart. But as you can see, we have kind of these intro to the Islamic civilization questions. And then we had the spread of Islam slide that has a bunch of other stuff on it. So just to start out here, I'm going to open the readings page and just look at this first map. I'm not going to go through all of these questions over on the side, but generally speaking, just so you all kind of have a heads up as to where we've been talking about or what we've been talking about, the Arab Empire and or Islamic people or Muslim or Arabia or what is now today Saudi Arabia is all kind of generally the area and the group of people we're talking about currently. The biggest issue, obviously, is we're kind of talking right about this central area. Again, what we know today as the Middle East. And we mentioned in class that this area is known as the Middle East because of the known world at the time. This map pretty much sums it up. So parts of Europe, Africa, and then Asia were the known world at the time. So this area gets the nickname the Middle East because from the European perspective, it was kind of the middle halfway point between them trading with other places like Persia, India, and China. So obviously from Europe, they're traveling eastward, and it's kind of the middle or the center of their journey. So that's how this area became known as the Middle East in the first place. Okay, so just to give you guys a reference of where we've been talking about, kind of geographically, that'll set that up pretty well. The other thing with all of this information about the spread of Islam, there are clearly a lot of different moving parts to this. That's why I kind of boxed some of these things up and put them into different categories. So I want to take the time to walk you all through this, just kind of little bits and pieces, because it's going to be really helpful as we continue on to just know the breakdown here. To start with this opening paragraph, if you all read it, from this page right here. The big ticket item is that this conversation starts in the year 632 when Muhammad, who was the prophet of Islam, dies. The problem is he does not leave necessarily any kind of structure for who's to be in charge next. So, as it says, he left no instructions about who would be the next leader. So, they get together in a small group to try to figure out who's going to take on the role of the leader. And it says right here that this group of Muslim leaders chose a new type of leader called the caliph or the successor. Okay, so this is where this conversation jumps off really is the fact that Muhammad has passed away and now they're trying to figure out who will be the religious leader of Islam. Okay, so this opening paragraph sets the stage, and the very first definition here in white, we can write a couple of things. So hopefully in your notebook or wherever you've been keeping track of this, whether it was on a Google Doc or however you submitted it, as long as you have a place to reference it, that's fine. But this all coincides with the spread of the religion because it all has factors about how it's going to spread. Okay, so the word caliph basically means successor or the person who is obviously going to be in charge next. A couple of other things you could write for the caliph is obviously that they are the leader of Islam, or you could say they're in charge of Islam or the leader of the religion. So, pretty much however you want to word it, that would take care of the definition of caliph. It is very similar, it has a lot of differences, but it is very similar to a pope in the fact that the pope is the religious leader for Catholicism, caliph is the religious leader for Islam. Okay, so that leads us to this recreating of the chart part right here. Okay, and it says recreate the first four caliphs. There was a little bit of blurriness on this one. I get you all the ones that talked to me about that. So what I did is I just kind of made a more zoomed in screenshot. And what I'm going to walk you all through this real quick. The most important thing is not the information itself, it's kind of the patterns that you see within this chart. So in class, we have recreated this chart and we've been just talking real briefly about the similarities, the differences, or any kind of patterns. So to walk through this really quick, if you all obviously have it in notebooks or on the Google Doc, wherever you have it, you clearly know that these are the first four people who are in succession of Muhammad. So you have this guy Abu Bakr, the second guy Umar, then Uthman and Ali. These people individually won't necessarily be what I quiz you about later or have a test over. It's going to be the patterns that we're going to talk about down here in general about all of the first four caliphs. Okay, so they have the categories of the relationship to Muhammad, the career of that individual, how many years they were caliph, and their big achievements. Okay, and we're definitely going to water this down very quickly. Um, if you guys look across the first topic here, the relationships to Muhammad, you can see that one of them was a father in law, one of them was a friend, the other one was a son in law, and member of the Umayyad family, I'll talk about in a second. And then over here it says first cousin and son in law. Okay, so the first guy is his father in law. So that means obviously that Muhammad's wife's father is this guy. So that's the father in law. Umar was just simply a friend. Uthman was a son-in-law, so that means that one of Muhammad's daughters got married to this guy, and this would be Muhammad's son-in-law. But he was also the member of a very powerful, very rich family, the Umayyad family. The Umayyad family was well known during that time period in that area because they had a lot of money in the trade business, which makes sense because, again, we've talked about how the Middle East is kind of in the center of both Europe, Africa, and Asia, so they're kind of a central point for trade. And last but not least, you have Ali over here. This is kind of an interesting category for him because he is a first cousin to Muhammad, but he's also a son-in-law. So I know that seems kind of weird, but that would be like one of your first cousins marrying one of your kids, right? I know that sounds kind of weird. So basically, Muhammad is cousins with Ali, but then Ali also married one of his daughters. Okay, so he's definitely a relationship by family. Now, I said that we were going to identify patterns here. So the deal with patterns is very simple. The pattern in this first category is that the majority of these first four caliphs were literally related to Muhammad. Not all of them, of course, because Umar was just a friend, but that is going to be a topic that's going to come up here later. So, right here, as it says, the majority of them were directly related or at least married within the family of Muhammad. Okay, the careers very similar because you see that three of them are merchants. Okay, and merchants again are businessmen or people involved with the trade of the time. So it makes sense that the majority of these guys were merchants because obviously it was important at the time because the Middle East and where Islam is kind of springing up is in that center point for a lot of the trade. The only standout in this category, obviously, is Ali because Ali is a soldier and also known as, in some capacity, as a writer. Okay, so obviously this is going to play a part in how he differs from the rest of these people. So we've got three of the four people are related to Muhammad. Three of the four people are merchants involved with the trade business. And now years as caliph. If y'all notice, they are pretty concurrent. So they go from 1 year to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. But if you guys look at the actual amount of years, that's actually the pattern. So you have about 2 years here, about 10 years here. You have 12 years here and 5 years here. Okay, so between 10 and 2 and all these different year stretches, the pattern that we noticed in class was that nobody really rules for too long. Okay, you have some shorter ones like 2 years and 5 years, and you have some longer ones that are 10 and 12 years respectively. But even for that time period, being in charge for about 10 or 12 years wasn't really a very long time. A lot of people back then, if you guys remember the pharaohs and some of the emperors and stuff, they actually usually have their job for life or as long as they want it. Okay, so the fact that most of these guys did not rule for very long would definitely be a fact that they all have in common. Again, 12 years and 10 years I know is a long time, but by comparison, when a lot of people back then were in charge for life, that's going to cause, uh, some people to be concerned about how long or not long they're in charge. Okay, I'm going to save a lot of time on this part because if you all notice right off of the very first couple lines for most of these, one of them is not like the other, right? And when it comes to achievements, I'm not going to ask you all later about the deep specifics about all of their achievements, but I will tell you that it's pretty clear that three of these guys had their biggest achievement be connected in some way to the spread of Islam. Because that again is the point. These guys were supposed to be the first four caliphs. They were the caliphs that were right after Muhammad, so obviously they were supposed to be a religious leader. So it makes sense that they would want to spread the religion. So the very first guy, the spread of Islam to all of Arabia. Then you have Umar, who's in charge of the spread of Islam to Syria, Egypt, and Persia. Uthman, the spread of Islam into Afghanistan and Eastern Mediterranean. But as we see with Ali here, he has a few other things going on. He's more interested in reforming tax collection, reforming government systems, and he spends most of his time in war with a neighboring kingdom. And as you can tell based on his career, he was a soldier, so it kind of makes sense that instead of focusing on business or trade or even the religion itself, he's actually kind of more focused on structuring the government how he wants it, and he's interested in starting a war or being in a battle with this group over here. Okay, so again, the overall patterns that we see are more important than the individual data. So if you guys recognize the patterns with the relationships, the patterns with the careers, the patterns with how long they were in charge, and obviously the pattern that most but not all of them were more focused on the spreading of Islam because that was kind of the name of their job, versus Ali here at the end, who was more interested in government stuff and military stuff. Okay, so that's how the chart kind of pans out. So we've read the opening paragraph, we defined caliph, and we've gone through this first four caliphs chart. What's going on here with 407 is going to be something that we can really talk about pretty quick, but I just want to make sure that you all have it kind of figured out all the way through. I said that page 407 is the go-to for this, and I'll scroll down with some of this stuff. You guys can see they talk about the Umayyads, and there's the chart. And then on this page right here, they start talking about the Sunni and the Shiite. Okay, so I will just for our purposes make it a little bigger as well as we look through this. But just know that I'm assuming that you guys found what you needed to find, and I'm just going to kind of leave it here as a reference point. Okay, so if I go back to the slide itself, it says that we have the Shia who believe something, and I put in green kind of a clue. We have the Sunni, and there's more in parentheses, and they believe this U family thing. And then over here, I put what three things do they both agree on? So we'll see if we can find them within here. Okay, so let's talk. Basically, this would be their split in Islam. I know we talked about the great schism with Christianity, and that is very true. So, this is another situation where you have a major split between this religion, and basically, there's a pretty good reason for it over here in green. Now, this less and more, I put that there for y'all so that you know that in the entire world today, there are actually less Shia Muslims and there are more Sunni Muslims. Okay, so in the world, there are less people that actually believe this type, and there's more Sunni Muslims that believe this type. But here's what it means pretty much. Okay, it says it within the readings, but if you notice, it says right here the Shia believed that Ali Muhammad's son-in-law, was his rightful heir. They also believed that all future caliphs had to be Ali's descendants. Okay, so if you look at this, what this means in green is the Shia Muslims believe that in order to be in charge of the religion, you have to be a direct descendant of Ali, who was that fourth of the first caliphs. So they feel that it's almost like a family tree situation where unless you can prove that you're a direct descendant of this last guy, Ali, then you can't be in charge. Okay, but I said that it's very few people that actually believe that type of Muslim or that type of Islam. And then the bigger group, the Sunni, which it says down here, the Sunni who outnumbered the Shia disagree. They recognize the Umayyad caliphs as rightful rulers, though they did not always agree with their actions. Okay, so what that means more or less is they believe that in order to be the leader, you just have to be in some way, shape, or form related to that Umayyad family. Okay, I mentioned the Umayyads before. They're a very powerful family in Islam. They were, again, very wealthy because of the trade of the day. So, this is kind of the split between the two groups. So, the split is, again, that one group thinks that they should all be descendant of Ali if they're planning on being the leader, or the Sunni group believes that anybody that has any descendancy to the Umayyad family would be perfectly fine. Okay, now even though they have their differences on who should be the leader or how you figure out who's going to be the leader, right here I put what three things do they both agree on. And that's kind of embedded in the reading right here because it says the Shia and the Sunni agreed on the major principles of Islam. They both believed that there was only one God. They also believed in the Quran as Islam's holy book and the five pillars of Islam. In other ways, the two groups develop different religious practices and customs is just kind of a little added piece. But what it's saying is they all believe in one God. They all believe in reading the Quran and the information that's within the Quran. And they both believe in following the five pillars. Okay. So that would be the three things that they all agree upon is that there is one God. They do plan on following the Quran as the holy book and the fact that they, again, as it says right here, are all going to agree to follow the five pillars. Okay, so that's that piece. And last but not least, here we'll talk about the Ottoman Empire. The big thing is there's a lot to be said about the Ottoman Empire, but just for this piece now, we needed to find out what country it was based on and how many years it lasted. Okay, so we can look really quick and I will show you all that in this case, where it talks about the Ottomans, it says during the late 1200s, Turkish clans settled parts of Asia Minor and they called themselves the Ottoman Turks. And it goes into talking about all this stuff about the Ottoman Empire. So even from reading up here and down here, we should figure out that the modern day country of Turkey is where the Ottoman Empire was kind of established. Okay, so based in what country? It's based in the modern day country of Turkey. Now, the lasted how many years? That was kind of a tricky question, but if you do the math here, it says that during the late 1200s is when this group kind of got its start, and they go through all these different years until finally it talks about it right here that local rulers and conquered people broke away, and that this empire finally crumbled in the early 1900s. In fact, the reason the Ottoman Empire eventually kind of crumbled is because of the outbreak of the First World War. So this lasts an actual pretty long time. So if you do the math here, we go from about the 1200s to the 1900s. So we've got about 700 years as our answer. Okay. So just to walk you all through this again, like I said, I'll close this out, but this kind of walks us through what we've been doing on Google Classroom for the last couple of days. So now we've talked about, again, the map in brief. We've talked about everything on this slide, and that's where all the information from these readings kind of was attached to. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful to keep you all kind of up to date on what we've been talking with all this stuff you guys have been looking at. We're obviously over the next couple of days going to continue our conversation about the spread of Islam. We're also going to be talking more specifically about different stuff that they invented, different parts of Islamic art, and kind of architecture and all kinds of different cool things that go with this time period. So definitely we'll just keep our eyes open on the influence of Islam and how it affects kind of the Middle East and eventually different parts of the entire world. All right, so hopefully you all have been keeping up with this, and again, hopefully this screencast help you confirm your answers or kind of help you create new ones or better ones. But definitely, as always, I hope everyone is staying safe out there. I hope you're keeping up, and let's be well, and hopefully to see some of you all back at school here pretty soon, and those that are going to kind of stay online. Hopefully, we just keep doing our thing. So I will talk to you all very soon, and have a good day. All right, bye.